I can't tell you how excited I am to spend some time with you today. Obviously, you're very well known. You've done so many things. We'd love to pick your brain about being an early adopter to the independent space as an advisor and business owner.
Yeah,
But would you mind just kicking us off and kind of sharing with our audience more about your background?
sure. I basically, I graduated from a state university of New York way back when. And then I actually had the luxury, it was a luxury back then to really get hired into a really prestigious bank management training program. Most of my colleagues who were there were from Harvard and Stanford. So everybody used to wonder why the heck I was there, being that I went to a state university and I didn't go to prep school either. Um, but then the career kind of progressed. I became an institutional salesman, for a number of firms, the last one being what they now call Morgan Stanley. Um, but what was interesting in 1987, a colleague of mine and I decided, hey, you know what? Why don't we do something on our own? That sounds pretty cool. Let's start our own business. So what happened was we actually didn't start our own, but we affiliated with a gentleman who was independent at the time, an independent financial advisor. He got his training at Cigna Insurance Company. So that's how we started. The year was 1987. 1997, Van Leeuwen and Company was formed, actually a little earlier this month. So we've been doing it now, Mike, for like 28 years on Van Leeuwen and Company.
Well, congrats on the anniversary. It's quite an accomplishment and a milestone, of course. And I know you've done a lot. You built your business. At one point, I know you had RIA, and you've built out your team. Would you mind maybe taking a moment or two to kind of maybe give us the Cliff Notes version on your current situation or the sell and say, so to speak?
Sure. I mean, I think, of course, I'm affiliated with LPL Financial. Technically now I'm an LPL employee because last June, as a matter of fact, we were one of the advisors who did sell their business to LPL. So I was very fortunate to make that happen. So yeah, I mean, I've been independent, but now I'm technically an employee. And frankly, there's nothing has changed. And it's been a great relationship over this past year. I have a wonderful team. Of course, my always belief is that I couldn't do this alone. I've got some really great team members that help, drive this business. We're all in the front seat, for lack of a better word, most of us all the time. And it's just been very gratifying because we've helped lots of people along the way to achieve a lot of their dreams, college educations, passing away, having lived a great life. So that's why this profession of mine, in my mind, is phenomenal, actually. And we get paid and well paid. So I'm very
So
thankful.
that's great. So congrats. It's been a year already. That's incredible. And so for today's conversation, Ken, we're really going to focus on the approach that you, so in Van Leeuwen and Company, took to grow your team, to build the culture, and really trying to understand and kind of peel back the onion on what it took to build the business for obviously a strong valuation and for a strong exit to make sure that your legacy of commitment and service to your clients and team lives on. And so with that, I kind of want to get into the owner versus advisor lens. I think we're both, it seems like we have an affinity for Jim Rohn, and on your website, under your just one of your distinctives or culture quotes was, you can't change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. So in the lens of that, as we talk about advisors being advisors versus owners and everything in between, can you talk a little bit more about that? Did you go independent with that direction in mind, or did it just kind of happen over time?
Well, one of the things was when we did go independent way back when in 1987, it was for our desire to be our own business owner, to have our own legacy, to make our own decisions. And it wasn't because we turned our back on corporate America, but no way. I mean, I was a young guy then, and it was just like, let's do this, let's try this when we're young. I've always operated under a philosophy, Mike, that I never want to live my life with regrets, right? So I wanted to do it. If it worked, it worked. If I didn't, if it didn't, I had an easy way back to being on a institutional bond desk at a major firm. So, hey, why not give it a try? And needless to say, it panned out. And as a business owner, right, as well as an advisor, I controlled my own destiny, because the way I always looked at this business was, I'm an entrepreneur who happens to do financial services or financial planning or investment management, whatever you want to call us. But I was always in control of my own destiny, and I could decide who I wanted to work with. I could decide, how I wanted to get paid, et cetera, et cetera. So that was always very, very promising to me. And I could control what I wanted to sell and who I wanted to sell to.
No, that's great. So it was for being independent was the mindset of, hey, this is mine. I own it. I've got the freedom and flexibility to run my business how I see fit. We can work with whoever we want to. If there's a bad fit, clearly we don't have to work with them, and we don't have to take that kind of corporate direction of size of accounts, proprietary products, and all that. And it's so fascinating to me. I mean, I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of successful advisors, but many of the advisors are finding themselves facing an exit with the firm that doesn't seem to carry as much value once they're removed. So, at what point did you really start thinking more like a business owner rather than a quote unquote top producing advisor in terms of, hey, I need help or I need to build out this team? If we want to go down the shore or we want to travel to Florida or, be out of town, uh, when did that occur to you? And then what changed in your day to day?
I mean, I think what really occurred to me about being an entrepreneur really is that's what we're looking to define right now as being an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur, you know, is someone who controls their own destiny. You turn out that you actually, in many cases, when you're an entrepreneur, you work more hours and you work harder, but at least it's yours. But then you get all these freedoms that everybody sees. Like, sure, if it's a Friday afternoon, I'm not staying till 5 o'clock. I'm leaving at 1 o'clock, drive down to the beach or the Jersey Shore, as we like to say, right? But it came
Right.
much more responsibility because, you were the man, you were responsible. So I think that was something that I actually enjoyed. I never shirked from responsibility at any time in my life, even when I was a kid. Um, so I enjoyed that feeling tremendously of being responsible to a lot of people, to a lot of constituencies, to clients, to my team, to my employees. And I never call them employees, but my team, um, and my family, myself, my community. Um, and that was always a great feeling.
Was that ever when you so I speak to a lot of advisors, and typically it's that, they'll have their CSA, right, their client service associate, but as you're building out your team, clearly it's an investment. Did you have a lot of challenges around that? And then how did your hiring or team development strategy really evolve once you started thinking about the enterprise value and the business moving forward?
I think what's always is, hiring is, or as we like to say, having people join you on your bus, um, is a challenge, but it's also really one of the joys of this business is that because I never, you always, the way we used to hire was you hired in anticipation of a need, not that you had a need and then you tried to fill it. It was always like, this is where I want the direction of Van Leeuwen and Company to go. So if I meet someone whom I like as a person, and they're interested and I feel like they're going to be a pleasure to work with, that's how I used to hire. right? I used to, the way I hired was if people smiled when they talked. I also like, there was a question that I had learned long ago is what if lucky? I mean, I used to ask them if they were lucky. Um, and did they feel lucky? And if they answered in that affirmative, I mean, that was really a positive thing to me. You know, I want people on my team, and I think I have that, of people who are glass half full people rather than half empty, because I think I tend to be that way a little bit as well.
When you've done an incredible job, because most advisors, and don't necessarily blame them for this, it is what it is, but most advisors aren't really having to hire a lot of people. So it does seem like there's a decent amount of turnover. And so when you're solving for these kind of intangibles about feeling blessed, feeling lucky, being optimistic and positive, that seems like it's pretty good advice for financial advisors, because quite honestly, they don't have a team like yours, right? So is there any additional advice there that, because I do talk to some advisors where it seems like they kind of want to piecemeal it together a little bit and say, hey, well, I want to hire this advisor, but it'd be nice if they had their own book or they could kind of pay their way. But you're looking down the road as this is an investment so that me, Ken, can get some more time back in my day to day.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that we never wanted to do was we never wanted to bring on an advisor who had his own book, because I wanted them to get steeped, or all my employees or team members, right, in the Van Leeuwen and Company way, right? I didn't want any excess baggage, and I didn't want any people who might have had their own desires in terms of looking to grow in a different direction. Because one of the key things at Van Leeuwen and Company, um, we like to call ourselves a fee-based financial planning firm. Like, and I think that is our motto. That's what we lead with. We're not a transaction-oriented company. We've been practicing, is now the term in the industry, holistic financial planning since 1987. So, I mean, I think that that's super important to me.
So
Um,
as you, so your clients, they are Van Leeuwen and Company's clients. This isn't, some, because some advisors,
no,
you'll 1099, everyone's W-2. That's the way that you structured the business.
everybody's a W-2. We have, for example, at LPL, we have one rep ID or a bunch of different rep IDs for different
Okay.
categories of business. But what happens is that it's a whole team effort. The people on the team are compensated on a salary plus bonus program. So I try to be very fair in terms of what compensation is. Um, and I like to also find out like what turns people on, right? Like what do you expect and respect? Because if I have a 27-year-old come to me and say, hey, Ken, I want to leave early tomorrow, Thursday, because, hey, I want to go to a concert down at the link. My goal is to say yes, because when I was a 27-year-old kid, that's what I wanted to do. Right. I mean,
Right.
and I want them to tell me the truth, because I can deal with that, right? Like, hey, Ken, I want to cut out early. Do you mind? I'm going to a concert, you know? Cool. I get that. I understand that, right? And when you have respect for people and their wishes, I've never had anybody, and I'll knock on the desk, take advantage of that, because I know I need them to commit to something. Like we need to have a meeting on a Saturday or something like that. They don't bat an eye. So, I mean, it's kind of like we just treat each other with respect. That's
Well,
how it.
it's an interesting thread, Ken, because in my daily conversations, it's not so black and white, but it seems like advisors are struggling with hiring of, hey, I've got this person and they just kind of want to be an order taker. Or I've got this advisor, but they're very ambitious and they want to be me one day. And so if you're an advisor building out your team and solving for that, I mean, maybe that's part of the equity conversation of as you continue to grow out the team as part of maybe incentives or bonuses. I mean, do you offer equity? How do you balance that out?
Well, we never offered equity. We just paid well, right? And that's one of the reasons we did this LPL acquisition, is that because LPL's program has basically identified that next gen, and they are supporting them in their way to go to that next level eventually, where after a period of time, they will actually own Van Leeuwen and Company again. So, I mean, in my mind, it's a great program because I think what that does is gives them a track to run on. Like everybody, I think, Mike, one of the things is that we all want a direction. And if we know a plan, then we can either agree with the plan or not agree with the plan. So, but always be honest with people in terms of what you're looking to do, right? And the other thing that I want to stress to you is that, you know, I do a lot of reading and I think a lot about other entrepreneurs. And one of the things is with as other entrepreneurs do, they realize it necessarily isn't about them. It's about the team and the employees. And what you always look to do is you look to hire people that are better and smarter than you. And I think that's a philosophy that I always had too when I met people, right?
Yeah.
I've got some fantastically really bright, intuitive people here. And then I've got some really dogged people too, meaning that they're such hard workers. Like I work with a woman now. Basically, I've worked with her probably close to 30 years. She and I have been together. And I always make a joke, like Donna is her name. Donna is so able to get tasks done. She can stand in the middle of the traffic on the New Jersey Turnpike and she'd still accomplish her work every day. That's how focused.
Right.
No distractions, you know?
No, that's great. Well, and it's interesting because a lot of times, my world, it's managing expectations, communication, and there are a lot of things that, whether it's, and we'll get into maybe more of the structure and your due diligence around finding the buyer, but you hear a lot of different things. And so in theory, I've always wondered, right? So you sell back to your broker dealer or your RIA and they say, hey, your team can buy it back one day. And so on the one hand, you have this wildly successful business, one of the largest firms across the organization in the country. And if my team has a hard time acquiring the business now, like what does that transition back look like? Is it financially where the team has to kind of buy it back from LPL, or is it a year, like a certain amount of years of service? Do you know how that process works?
It's years of service. Plus, I think it's a piece of what they make over time that is technically they paid back and then they get it back. Okay. That's
Okay,
the way it will come out of their comp down the road in terms of what they make. Okay.
got
So
it.
in effect, they're funding it themselves out of their compensation.
Okay, very good. No, that's great. So now that you're in this sell and stay, it's been about a year. If you could, looking back, and obviously you can't change it, but as other advisors listen to you and take your guidance and feedback, what strategic decision or investments would you have made earlier if you were doing it all over again?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that Van Leeuwen and Company did is that again, we our expenses were pretty, higher than most, probably because we invested accordingly in people. Um, I was not afraid to pay salaries or compensation to people, you know. Um, I never dealt with salary metrics and surveys and all those other things. I just paid what I thought was a fair wage to them, right? I mean, maybe a little bit leaner on the expenses, but you know what? I thought I ran a pretty good ship. We achieved what we wanted to do. We achieved the people we wanted to attract. So, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I could have lived a long time. I shouldn't have sold Apple stock after I about doubled my money,
Right,
20 years
right,
ago. But I know,
right.
so this
Now
business,
you
so it has that, as you know.
Well, and your reputation has always been incredible for as long as I can remember. Whether you were in Florida or California, people knew you all and what you were doing. And so I think it's going to be really interesting you're going to help a lot of people with this conversation. So what parts of the business, because it's always interesting too, Ken, right? Like the talking pundits and the consultants, they're in investment news or financial planning or advisor hub and all these different things. And they're telling advisors, you need to do this, you need to do that. So I'm always intrigued as to what actually drives valuation. Does that truly matter? Or is that just a way for you to charge an hourly fee? And I say that with complete respect and love, right? There's some really good people out there, but there's also, I think, some white noise that maybe we can ignore. But what parts of the business for you all needed to be systematized or documented to make it, more transferable? Like, can you talk more about,
Sure.
like,
I
I mean,
think two
incredible.
things.
Does that make sense?
We had a couple things. One is no client just meets with one professional on the team, right? I think everything we do in teams, whether it's me and another advisor, me and two associates, because we want the clients to understand that it's more than the Ken show, right? I think that's super important. And I think you, as the advisor or as Ken, have to get past yourself a little bit. And what I mean by that is that you have to get past the fact that it's all about you. Um, and it's really about a team effort, because as we all know, a lot of us know on this call, right? Clients in many cases want to love you up, as I like to say. They look because they've been with you a long time. But then they have to understand that I've brought this other person into our relationship for your benefit, because what happens, God forbid something happens to me, I want to make sure that you're well taken care of as we go through our time together, and hopefully that you stay with Van Leeuwen and Company and its predecessor, its future generations. I think that clients, when you talk to them about that, they really get it and they feel good about that. So remember, I'm always about, Michael, that you got to look through the client's eyes. Like, what are they seeing? Um, and as we all know in this business, advisors can get a little heady. They can
Right.
sometimes be cocky with their abilities. Their life is measured in gross production at many, by us all. Um, but maybe it's really how well do we take care of the clients um, that we've chosen to work with. I mean, you can, and that's the great thing about our business, right? We can define the clients that we work with, but just take really good care of them and look at them as people too. And what I mean by that is just look when, you know, if they always feel like they're being sold something, is that a good relationship to have? Right. Like, that's why we did financial planning way back when, because we wanted to be as we're seated on their side of the table, right? Like, we're doing this together, and you happen to have success, Mr. Klein, and I'm getting paid. So I think that's a win-win.
That's incredible. So when you deploy that or implement the team strategy, you talk to some folks, is that simply a cadence? Ken's making 7 appointments today and he's quote unquote calling out sick. So we're still going to have our meeting. We're still going to have our virtual call and you're meeting with my team today. Or, knowing you, I know it's more detailed than that, but what does that, what does that look like? And over time, are those, I know it's the firm's relationships, but how often are they meeting with the team versus maybe just Ken?
Well, they never meet with me individually anymore. Um, and what we do is we always create positive expectations for our clients. Like, great example is next week I have to travel. I'm going to be away for a couple of days at a business, actually an executive enrichment program. But what's happening is that we had a meeting on the books for next week. And I called the client earlier this week that said, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, I can't be at the meeting next Wednesday. Is it okay if my associate is just on the call with you? And she was, in this case, totally fine with it. And sure, she said, I like having you at the meetings, Ken. I want you to continue to be at the meetings, but this one time, sure, the associate can gladly take it, because I don't ever want clients to feel like the rug got pulled out underneath them, right? Because
Right.
what's really important, and this is for all the advisors listening to this and the public at large, trust is the most important thing we can build with our clients, right? Or with our team members or the community at large. And you never want to violate that trust, even as little as that is making a phone call to Mrs. Smith to tell them, hey, I can't be at the meeting. Is it okay? Because then they know their expectations have been set. It's not like they get a surprise
Right.
and like, where's Ken? Because I'm not big on surprises, Michael, so I don't want to surprise clients. I mean, I don't think that's fair to them. I mean, just if they understand the expectations, then that's great. Then that's what you want.
That's incredible insight and feedback. Clearly, you all are financial planning focused.
Yep.
You solve very complex financial challenges, issues, questions, whether that would be the corporate executives that you work with and restricted stock and stock options, or the special needs families that you all serve. Tell me, you ultimately sold to LPL, obviously. What did your process look like for deciding on a buyer? And then also, did you ever consider succession internally?
Well, of course, the first is you consider succession internally, right? But then we realized, Michael, and the team realized that too, that the value of our company was exploding at such a level that if that was legitimately a market price, not excessive, but not underwhelming either, that number was pretty big. So how were they going to be able to even afford that, would be a real challenge for them. I also know that in the past business situations that I've dealt with clients, that clients who sold their businesses for payments over time after the deal closed, they never went well, because everybody loves each other in the beginning, but when it's 3, 4, 5, 7 years, 10 years down the road and you're still making payments and it's a non-family member, then you do question, why are you making that payment? So I never wanted to be in that where I had to wait for someone else to pay me. Then, as you know, right, I think that, and it's not a secret, right, because people know when, as you start to get older, right, and they get to know you're an RIA, and they get to know, because they're looking at ADVs, which are all public records and things of that nature,
Right.
who may be candidates, right? So, you start getting calls from every Tom, Dick, and Harry about, hey, wanting to buy your business. So from, even the wirehouse BDs, or, the other independent BDs, to private equity, to other RIA firms, everybody wants to take a crack at you. So, honestly, for a period of time, maybe a couple of years, we were probably getting a call 3 times a week by someone looking to talk to you about
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a slow week for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned private equity. I mean, gosh, there's international money now pouring in. Private equity. We're now seeing this family office type setup where maybe it seems like culturally you can be a little bit more aligned with a longer time horizon. Kind of TBD, but could you maybe share your process about, you know, the difference in valuation and total compensation from say private equity to an LPL? I mean, I imagine there was a pretty, obviously LPL does a really good job can't imagine they're the highest bidder, right? But can you talk about some of the differences in the different options you were looking at?
Sure. For example, we were entertaining two offers prior to the LPL doing what they were doing, right? One was from a Canadian RIA, because as many of your listeners know, right, not only do we have a presence in New Jersey, but we also have a presence in Florida. So the Canadian RIA was very interested because, as from people who go to Florida know, and particularly Southeast Florida, like that Fort Lauderdale to Jupiter area, and then on the west coast of Florida from Naples, there are a lot of Canadians who come there, and well-to-do Canadians who come there in the wintertime. So they wanted to have an avenue that they were well served in their winter marketplace rather than being marketed to by a lot of the, you know, American firms, for lack of a better word. So they were very interested in establishing, have a presence in my location in Southeast Florida. So that was one, was very appealing, very unique. So gave that really strong consideration. And then, of course, the private equity equation, which, of course, we know what they're trying to do, and it's very admirable. I mean, they're trying to roll up a lot of our practices because they know that, you can put together a bunch of different practices. You'll get even a higher multiple from a buyer. And I think, as we also know, too, there are a lot of, financial advisors is really still, there's a lot of us. And I think they know also they'd like to do these roll-ups because we're a very fragmented business in many cases. So, I mean, they were making total great business sense. And then, of course, LPL came along, and they, and give a kudos to LPL. LPL also saw that this was happening to their advisor base, in my mind, and they wanted to just create an avenue because, hey, we want their assets to stay on our platform, and we want to we wanted to service their businesses. So, fairness to them, that's what happened. And then I eventually chose LPL. And I chose LPL because, look, I'll be affiliated with them 30 years in July. I
Right.
I've seen a lot of change through the years, and I mean, I think LPL as a firm has never been in a better place than it is today, sitting here in early June 2025. It's, I really respect our CEO's message now, Rich Steinmeier, where he doesn't want to become the best independent broker dealer. He wants to become the best in the wealth management space. And I love superlatives like that
Right.
because he speaks the truth and he speaks what his goal is. And, like the previous CEO, Dan Arnold, also fantastic business leader, right? Like, guys that you want to attach yourselves to because they know they're going places. So that's one of the things why, I did the LPL transaction. And frankly, it was the best for my clients also, because they didn't notice a change. I mean, we talked to them, they don't notice a difference. So that's the best thing, right? It didn't change their life one bit.
Right.
And that's the respect we gave them, right? We wanted to give them that respect again, right? It's not about upsetting their apple cart and changing paperwork and doing custodial changes and all kinds of things like this, and all new formats and forms, and us learning new business solutions. It was, we could stay with that same true process that we had known for all these years. And which is more importantly, the people in home office who could help us when issues arose, right? I mean, all of these organizations are people, and LPL has some tremendous people who work there, executives, and we knew we could count on them for help if we ever needed.
No, that's incredible feedback. And I think the reality is for a lot of advisors, it really depends on their situation, right? I completely understand having to learn new technology and repapering and being a strain on clients and your team and yourself. That makes sense. I know we're coming up on time, so two more questions, if that's okay, Ken. Pivoting a little bit, I was reading about so your value proposition. So talk to me a little bit about the Rembrandt Society, and then how did you make your value proposition scalable beyond yourself or really any key personnel?
Okay. Well, as again, Mike, and this is the overarching theme, I always want the clients to fully know what they're paying us and how we are getting paid. I want no mystery on how is Van Leeuwen and Company making money? How is Ken making money? So we created the Rembrandt Society. Interesting story. Of course, Van Leeuwen's a Dutch name. I'm actually first generation. My parents came here after World War II in the late 40s. Um, and of course, Rembrandt was a famous Dutch painter. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to create different levels of service and more. I wanted to create when clients hired us, or as we like to call them, members, because taking all line from American Express, membership has its privileges. So I wanted them to know who they worked with. So if you entered at the base level segment of the Rembrandt Society, which was the gallery collection, you dealt with one advisor. If you wanted to work in the museum collection, you dealt with another advisor. And if you dealt in the private collection, you worked with me. Okay. And of course, there's different, because we charge financial planning fees. And we wanted clients to make sure, you can work with the entry or you can work with the senior guy, but you're going to pay for the senior guy. And we wanted to make sure clients knew that, what they were getting. Because again, like I talked about before earlier, was I never wanted to do the old switcheroo, like, hey, I'm glad handing you, I'm welcome you, I'm giving all, my wisdom to you early on, and then you don't see me again.
Right.
That's not what I wanted. I wanted clients to clearly understand, um, what what was happening.
That's incredible. It's can't believe how fast this time. I could talk to you all day, Ken. I'm very grateful for your time. Last question, if I may.
Sure.
Um, call it the last mile. So you have an advisor and owner with 5 years left before an exit. What do you recommend they prioritize?
Well, they should prioritize their financials. They should start operating their business as a business, Mike, not as a lifestyle type of business. Okay. They should really start to put in programs, structures in place, get very professional in what they're doing, for themselves as well as their staffs. Okay. Be very clear about what their expenses are in the different categories. It's amazing to me because I hear, like, some people don't know what they spent for client appreciation, right? It's kind of like, I don't know. Get very clear on your different expense categories, where your money is being spent. Again, one of the things is, as I mentioned earlier in this, I'm very focused, like, on the great entrepreneurs always talk about know where your money's going, right? And trying to minimize your costs. So I'm very much about that, or be as smart with your money as possible. Okay. I think that's super important, and they get super intentional. And then really define who your ideal client is, right? Because your time is limited and your team's time is limited. So if you want to deal with $10 million people, okay, that's your business decision. If you want to deal with $1 million people, that's your business decision. No right or wrong, but just know who you want to work with. And then you can structure your systems and team to service those individuals. That's what I would say with folks. Just read and really get clear about what your whole message is about, right? Like, what are you trying to do? Like you're trying to create a business, or you're trying to create a legacy. Do you want to be known as a really good advisor and trustworthy advisor? Do you want to have a reputation? Or, some people don't desire that. Do you want to grow? I mean, like Van Leeuwen and Company still, man, we want to grow. I mean, that's the whole point is we're not stopping. I'm not stopping. My team's not stopping. So why? This is fun, at least most days. Right.
Well, I think it's finding the joy and the fulfillment even in the grind, right? And the fact that you did sell a year ago and you're still getting after it. I mean, I presume the structure and all that benefits you to kind of keep growing. And I did hear an incredible stat a few months ago. And this was even within the LPL. So I'm sure it's the same across the business, that about 1% of the advisors or the firms in the LPL ecosystem are responsible for a little north of 90% of the organic growth. So net new assets, not including any kind of market fluctuation. So, and clearly you guys are one of those
True.
firms.
Probably true. Probably true. And like last week, I spent the whole week at Duke University just with fellow LPL advisors talking about growth. I mean, that was the focus of it. And me and my colleagues, I mean, that's what we're about, right? It's not standing still. This business is too much fun, and I actually like meeting the new people, and that's really what turns me on, is getting to talk to somebody new and fresh, for lack of a better word.
Thank you, Ken. This has been incredible. I really appreciate your time today.
You're welcome, Michael. Thank you for the opportunity.